What you're about to hear is raising serious questions about the future of peacekeeping in Africa. After nearly 3 decades, South Africa is pulling its troops out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a decision that may sound routine on the surface, but could signal something much deeper beneath it. Because this is not just about one country stepping away, it raises a bigger question. Is Africa beginning to rethink or even lose trust in global peacekeeping systems? And if that's the case, what does that mean for the future of security on the continent? If Africa's story matters to you, take a second to like this video so more people can see it. Because today, we're not just looking at a withdrawal, we're looking at what it represents and what could come next. To understand why this matters, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. The eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo has, for years, remained one of the most complex and fragile areas on the continent. Armed groups operate across vast territories. Communities continue to face cycles of displacement, insecurity, and uncertainty. And for many people living there, stability has often felt just out of reach. In response to this long-standing crisis, one of the largest peacekeeping missions in the world was deployed, the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, MONUSCO. Its mandate has been clear: protect civilians, support stabilization, and help create the conditions for long-term peace. Over time, multiple countries contributed troops to support this mission, and among them, South Africa played a significant role. For nearly 27 years, South African forces have been part of efforts to stabilize the region, not just as a global commitment, but also as part of broader African engagement in regional security, which is why this decision is not a small one. Now let's look at what has just been officially confirmed.
South Africa has announced the withdrawal of its troops from a United Nations mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. President Cyril Ramaphosa's office said on Saturday that he'd informed the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres of the decision. South Africa has supported the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the DRC for 27 years and has more than 700 soldiers deployed there. The presidency says Pretoria will work jointly with the UN to finalize the timelines and other modalities of the withdrawal, which will be completed before the end of the year. It says the decision to leave MONUSCO was influenced by the need to consolidate and realign the resources of the National Defence Force. The mission's mandate is to counter the many rebel groups been fighting for decades in eastern Congo, a region that has recently seen an escalation.
So, what we're seeing here is clear. South Africa has formally announced the withdrawal of its troops after nearly 3 decades of involvement. And importantly, this is not an abrupt exit. It is a planned withdrawal, with coordination alongside the United Nations. But even with that, the timing raises an important question. Why now? Part of the answer lies in the evolving reality on the ground. Despite years of international presence, the situation in eastern Congo has remained complex. In some areas, violence has persisted. In others, new tensions have emerged. And in recent periods, there have been reports of escalating clashes in certain regions. This has created a growing sense of urgency, but also a growing sense of frustration, because after decades of peacekeeping, expectations naturally change. People begin to ask, what progress has been made, what challenges remain, and what needs to be done differently. Now, it's important to be clear. Peacekeeping missions operate in extremely difficult environments. They are not designed to solve every problem overnight. They are part of a broader effort that includes political processes, regional cooperation, and local dynamics. But when a mission continues for decades, it becomes necessary to reassess, not as a failure, but as a reality check, and that appears to be part of what we're seeing now. Because this moment reflects something deeper, a shift in thinking, not just in South Africa, but across parts of the continent. There is a growing conversation about how security challenges should be addressed in Africa, and increasingly, that conversation includes a stronger focus on African-led solutions, regional forces, continental coordination, and strategies that are shaped closer to the realities on the ground. This does not mean rejecting international cooperation, but it does suggest a rebalancing, a move toward greater ownership, greater alignment, and perhaps greater accountability to local realities. South Africa's decision can be seen within that context, not simply as a withdrawal, but as part of a broader reassessment of how peacekeeping should evolve. And this brings us back to the central question: is Africa losing trust in global peacekeeping systems? The answer is not straightforward, because trust is not something that disappears overnight. It is shaped over time, through results, through expectations, and through changing realities. In many parts of the world, peacekeeping continues to play an important role. But in regions like Eastern Congo, where missions have lasted for decades, the expectations are higher. People are not just looking for presence, they are looking for progress, not just stability, but sustainable solutions. And when those expectations are not fully met, it naturally leads to reflection, not necessarily rejection, but reconsideration. Now, the implications go beyond Congo, because peacekeeping missions are part of a global system, and changes within that system can have wider effects. If more countries begin to reassess their roles, what does that mean for future missions? If regional forces take on greater responsibility, how will global partnerships adapt? And if strategies shift, what new models of cooperation might emerge? These are questions that are now becoming more relevant, not just for policymakers, but for the future of security across the continent, because the challenges remain, but the approach may be changing. Part 8. The Bigger Meaning, 1330 to 1530. At its core, this moment is about more than troop movements. It is about direction. It is about how systems evolve and how regions define their priorities. South Africa's decision reflects a broader process, a process of reassessment, of adaptation, and of looking forward. Because systems are not static. They change, they respond, and they adjust to new realities. And in many ways, this is part of that evolution. At its core, this moment is about more than troop movements. It is about direction. It is about how systems evolve and how regions define their priorities. South Africa's decision reflects a broader process, a process of reassessment, of adaptation, and of looking forward. Because systems are not static, they change, they respond, and they adjust to new realities. And in many ways, this is part of that evolution. So when we look at this moment, we are not just seeing an ending, we are seeing a transition, a shift in how peacekeeping is understood, a shift in how responsibility is shared, and possibly a shift in how Africa shapes its own security future. The story is still unfolding, and what comes next will depend on the choices made now. If this made you think differently about peacekeeping in Africa, take a moment to like this video so more people can join the conversation. Subscribe to Voice of Africa for more in-depth, fact-based stories that matter. And tell me in the comments, do you think global peacekeeping is still effective in Africa? Or is it time for a new approach? Because understanding these moments is how we begin to understand the future.